Hi class. So I realize I haven't been doing a lot of videos, which I normally do much more than I do. So I'm recording you a video this week as your announcement. So last week you were looking at strategy and organizational change. And you started reading one of my favorite authors on organizational change, which is Edgar Schein. And it's interesting because his book is called Organizational Culture and Leadership, but really he's an organizational consultant. And he spent a lot of time going into different companies and looking at how they were working and weren't working. And he had to basically strategically think about how he could fix these problems. And that's really what this book is about. But his view on it is that culture is really the thing that you have to make the most, you can make the best intervention when you intervene with culture. And I think that's true. I mean, my master's is in counseling, so I firmly agree that the organizational culture is by far probably one of the most important things to look at. But it does help because you still need to think strategically when you're dealing with organizational culture. So that kind of was where I went with that, and that's why I put that reading in there. I really like Schein a lot. But this week we're moving on, and we're moving into strategic plan preparation, and you get to do a SWOT analysis. Now, some of you probably have been doing SWOT analysis since you were undergrads. So you may think to yourself, oh, I got to do another SWOT analysis. Well, we're trying to take SWOT analysis to that next level. And what really I want to see here is you using the SWOT strategically. It's not just about filling in the squares, it's about thinking how the squares interact with one another to create a three-dimensional model of the organization, how they are connecting together, how the weaknesses and the strengths interplay with one another, how the weaknesses are interacting with the opportunities or with the threats. Where are what are those all coming into? That's why the SWOT analysis is typically in a block. Because all of these parts connect to one another up and down and sideways, and there's all kinds of connections running in the middle of it. So that's kind of where you're going to need to pull in your strategic thinking cap. So part one of the discussion board this week is really just filling in that worksheet on page 2.1. Pick 10 areas to fill in, post the table in your discussion board. And then under that table, just talk about part two. And that's really where you're going to do the discussion part, bring in some readings, that kind of thing. You're welcome to post two different posts. I'll see them both when I'm grading, so it won't matter if they're separated by people's comments or whatever. But if you want to post the table first and then come back later and post part two, just make sure everything's labeled and has headings. As you probably can tell, I'm a stickler for headings. Headings are probably the most important thing you can learn in just every place in the world. It's just important. I can't even tell you how important it is. You'll use it in your work, you'll use it everywhere. And honestly, I don't know how many of you are teachers, but if you're a professor, if you're a teacher or whatever, trying to read a big hunk of students' work with no idea of how they're organizing it or no idea of where they're answering the questions that you want them to answer, it's a pain. It takes 3 or 4 times longer to read, and you're more likely to miss something that is important. Headings prevent that, and you will definitely be using a lot of headings in your dissertation, so it's good to practice now. I will be getting your papers graded this week, and the discussion boards from last week, I will also get those graded as well. As you can see, I pop in and out of the discussion boards. I'm not always going to respond to everybody, but I'm trying to respond to people at different times during the week as I see people posting. But you may not always get a response from me, but you will sometimes get a response from me. But definitely, I am here, I'm watching, I am everywhere. So let me know if you have any questions, and enjoy this week.